First Steps in the Higher Life, from James Allen's book, Out from the Heart. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. I'm really excited to be moving on to this book. This book is going to be great. Just to introduce the book, this is a mass reproduction copy of the book that, again, we are going to do Out from the Heart by James Allen, if you can see it there. This is the one I make my notes in. This, you know how it goes here. I will be reading from this copy of it. This is as close as I can gather, roughly around 1920, when this copy was released. So I will be reading from it, from as close to the original as I can find, just for the integrity of the words being written, as usual. So the reason I selected this book, there's a couple of them. First of all, one of the most defining books for my recovery from substance use, for my spiritual journey, for personal growth and change and transformation was the book that I did a review on earlier. I think, it's got to be 2 years ago now, called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It was a fantastic book. And if we remember, James Allen is regarded as the father, so to say, of self-help. And his books were being read, well, specifically As a Man Thinketh, probably multiple others, were being read in the formation and the writing of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and really had some input on, or was really referenced for by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous and many of the early members as a book to read, to help themselves continue to progress in their spiritual journeys and lifestyle. So I read As a Man Thinketh, and it was one of the books that really changed my perspective, changed my understanding, and allowed me to really embrace a different way to live. Now, I say all that because Out from the Heart is the follow-up to that book. This book was written in 1904 as a sequel to As a Man Thinketh. And it's to provide guidance and what we're going to be reading about, specific actions to take to help grow in spiritual knowledge and understanding and virtue and righteousness and peace and love. And this is and what's interesting is this book has a chapter, and that's the chapter we're going to be reading, that it talks about steps, which is interesting, right? It's it gives steps similarly to the Oxford group. It gives steps similarly to 12-step fellowships, right? But just remember, though, this didn't take it from them. I don't know. I can't say for sure that they took that style from this book. I don't believe so. It's pretty common terminology, but we are going to be talking about 10 steps that James Allen suggests to get started on your spiritual journey, right? So remember, this is not exhaustive. This is not the end all be all of actions need to be taken for a spiritual journey and for your own personal growth and change and transformation. But this is where he suggests we start. And remember, this was written, the Oxford group wasn't even really founded till 1921. Alcoholics Anonymous didn't really start to become a thing until 1935. The big book wasn't written until 1939. So there's a lot. This predated any of those organizations, at least, by 15 years, if not longer. 30 years for Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's pretty interesting to see this stuff, to see these things written down, to see these ideas were really starting to take root during that time. So I thought it was really cool when I was reading it. So that's why we're going into it, because we talk a lot about what we're supposed to be doing. How we talked a lot about absolute love and absolute honesty and this and that, and absolute unselfishness and absolute purity, right? And then we've talked a lot about changing behaviors. We've talked a lot about changing our way of living, right? And how we should be doing it, and we got to be pointed at this certain thing, right? So I wanted to bring this in because it gives us some functional steps to actually take. And I have found them extremely beneficial. So that is why I've selected this book to go into next. So, well, and another reason is I, from time to time, dig back into this book. Right. So what we're going to be reading is chapter 5. It's called First Steps in the Higher Life. Okay. And this is, and to be fair, the first 4 chapters of this book, absolutely fantastic. Here's their titles in case anyone's interested. The Heart and the Life, The Nature and Power of Mind, Formation of Habit, Doing and Knowing. All of those are fantastic chapters. And then after this one is Mental Conditions and Their Effects. Fantastic. If you're into doing inventories on yourself, if you're into actually digging into you, that's a great chapter to take a look at, just to get some direction on what you need to inquire for yourself. And then the last exhortation chapter, which I believe I'm actually going to read after we go through all of chapter 5. So I just want to give a little shout out to the first 4 chapters of this book, because we're jumping straight to chapter 5 for the actions that he's going to be suggesting. But this entire book is fantastic. It's relatively short as well. I mean, the copy from the early 1900s is only 59 pages. This mass reproduction print is only, I don't even know, probably 30 pages, 35 pages. 34 technically. So it's a relatively short book, but it is jam-packed with information. I loved reading James Allen because he made it to the point, he made it concise, and he made it so people could follow along. And people got the information without having to trim the fat, so to say. So, and again, reason I wanted to do this is a these steps are ones that I am going through again for myself to improve my own personal life. So I will be just know I am actively going through these with anyone that's following along and trying to apply them to myself to the best of my ability, right? Trying to actually implement these changes into my life that we're going to be talking about. And I encourage you to do the same. Whatever it looks like for you. I will share a bit of my personal experience with each step as we go, and what I'm actively doing to practice it, and what I am actively doing to embody it, or what I've learned from each one, right? And again, I've been pursuing spiritual growth and knowledge and recovery for a very long time. Well, let me quantify that. For many years, in 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my recovery, right? I didn't know this is what I was looking for when I first got started, but after I got started, it's been an active pursuit of mine for at least 7 years. And I've really, really enjoyed it. And it's been obviously eye-opening and enlightening and just such a beautiful thing. So I'm happy to share this with y'all. I'm happy to share a little bit with you, because part of this podcast purpose is to actually give you the ability or instructions or directions that have helped me and can help you put this work in to change your life. So I'm excited to do this. A lot of the stuff we've read so far is conceptual or more vague principle, and which you can apply in and of itself and find ways to improve your life, right? Like it's not that it's out of the realm of possibility, but it is. This is much just. It's very specific. It's very intentional and directive, which I don't know about you, but I need sometimes. I need that sometimes. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to read the introduction to the chapter, which is, well, not really the introduction. We're going to read the first part of the chapter, which precedes the first step. And we are going to stop when we get to the actual first step. And then next week we'll do the first step and we'll go through until all 10 are covered. And then I believe I'm going to do like I said, the exhortation as the last episode for this series. So I'm really excited about it. And let's go ahead and we'll get into it. Again, like I said, I will be reading from this copy from the early 1900s. So here we go. This is the chapter, First Steps in the Higher Life, from the book Out from the Heart by James Allen. Want to make sure I said that right. First steps in the higher life. Seeing that the path of virtue is the path of knowledge, and that before the all-embracing principles of truth can be comprehended, perfection in the more lowly steps must be acquired. How, then, shall a disciple of truth commence? How shall one who aspires to the righting of his mind and the purification of his heart, that heart which is the fountain of and repository of all the issues of life, learn the lessons of virtue, and thus build himself up in the strength of knowledge, destroying ignorance and the ills of life? What are the first lessons, the first steps? How are they learned? How are they practiced? How are they mastered and understood? The first lessons consist in overcoming those wrong mental conditions which are most easily eradicated and which are the common barriers to spiritual progress, as well as in practicing the simple domestic and social virtues. And the reader will be the better aided if I group and classify the first 10 steps in the 3 lessons as follows. Vices to be overcome and eradicated. Vices of the body. First lesson, discipline of the body. Lesson 1, indolence. Lesson 2, self-indulgence. Next is vices of the tongue. And the second lesson is discipline of speech. Lesson 1 is slander. Lesson 2 is gossip and idle conversation. Lesson 3, abusive and unkind speech. Lesson 4, levity or irreverent speech. Lesson 5, captiousness or fault-finding speech. Virtues to be practiced and acquired. Third lesson, discipline of inclination. Lesson 1, unselfish performance of duty. Lesson 2, unswerving rectitude. Lesson 3, unlimited forgiveness. The 2 vices of the body and 5 of the tongue are so called because they are manifested in the body and tongue, and also because by so definitely classifying them, the mind of the reader will be the better helped. But it must be clearly understood that these vices arise primarily in the mind and are wrong conditions of heart worked out in the body and the tongue. The existence of such chaotic conditions is an indication that the mind is altogether unenlightened as to the real meaning and purpose of life, and their eradication is the beginning of a virtuous, steadfast, and enlightened life. But how shall they be overcome and eradicated? By first and at once checking and controlling their outward manifestations, by suppressing the wrong act. This will stimulate the mind to watchfulness and reflection until, by repeated practice, it will at last come to perceive and understand the dark and wrong conditions of mind out of which such acts spring, and will abandon them entirely. So, there we go. That is it for the first reading from this chapter. Now, again, I want to emphasize that is just the setup to the rest of the chapter, and the 10 steps, the 10 lessons indicated here, and that first part of the reading is broken up into like 3 things. It's introducing what's going on, right, and what's being introduced and why, and then it breaks it up into the 10 steps proposed, the 2 steps or lessons of bodily discipline, the 5 of discipline of our speech, and 3 of inclination. And then he went in to say why it's proposed this way and the intention for their proposal. So he gives us some really good groundwork, right? He gives us some really good framework. He's saying, hey, here's some places to start. How will you start here, right? And I really like, he opens it up with a place that I think is really important to point out here. He's seeing first of all, I do like this first comparison, or this first observation, seeing that the path of virtue is the path of knowledge, and that before the all-embracing principles of truth can be comprehended, perfection in the more lowly steps must be acquired. How then shall a disciple of truth commence? How do we start, right? And the path of virtue is the path of knowledge, right? And when we practice these principles of truth, we need to be able to do this, right? We need to be able to create an environment where we can begin to practice these things. How are we supposed to do it? Right? And it goes right into it. How shall one who aspires to the righting of his mind and the purification of his heart, that heart which is the fountain and repository of all issues of life, learn the lessons of virtue and thus build himself up in the strength of knowledge, destroying ignorance and the ills of life? Right? So a lot of people are stuck here. How do we start? How do we start? Okay, you might be convinced, like, hey, I've got to fix my mind. Hey, I've got to fix what's going on and the thoughts I'm having and the direction I'm taking in my life. But how do I do that? Right? Like, I'm keeping on taking these destructive actions, things that hurt me, that hurt others. How do I actually do this? Right? It's an important thing, a big question to ask, right? A lot of people don't know how to stop things. A lot of people don't know how to change. How do we begin to actually change? I was there for a long time, so long of asking, how do I change, that I began to think it was just impossible. Now, I don't know if you relate to that, but I thought I was just a hopeless case. And this is how I was going to be destined for the rest of my life, to behave the way I was behaving and take the actions I was taking, which included a lot of self-destructive behaviors, right? A lot of unhealthy things like drinking and drugs and lying and dishonesty, cheating, stealing, all of these things. Right? How do I start this? How do I change this? It's a big question. It was a big question for me. And then I also want to point out in this passage that I just read, he states, he makes a clear distinction between two things. On one hand, he says, how shall one who aspires to the righting of his mind, so correcting our mind, and the purification of his heart. So correcting our thoughts, righting of our mind, and purification of our heart. The correct intentions, purifying our intentions, our purpose, right? Because those are two different things. They are connected. Our heart drives our thoughts drives our actions and our words and our behaviors, right? So these are very different things. And I'm glad he identifies them as such. I'm glad he actually points out both of them to say, hey, both of these things need to be done. Both of these things need to be done. And then he goes even more into this distinction and says, the heart, which is the fountain and repository of all issues of life, right? So the heart is the origination piece. The heart is where all problems spring from for ourselves. This means that all problems, bad and negative thinking and actions, come from the heart. So that is where we need to actually get to find a permanent fix. Right? This is how did he phrase it? The fountain and repository of all issues in life. It's our soul, it's our heart, it's our intention, it's our purpose, it's where we function from, right? That's where our ideas originate from. That's where our actions will eventually be driven from. It's this condition of heart. It's this condition of soul, right? And how do we learn the lesson of virtue? That's what we are going to get started with these 10 steps, right? How do we do these things? How do we right our mind? How do we purify our hearts, right? This is got to start somewhere. So that's why he brings in these 10 steps. The first lesson consists in overcoming those wrong mental conditions which are most easily eradicated and which are the common barriers to spiritual progress, as well as in practicing the simple domestic and social virtues. All right? Okay, so here we go. So we have to start with overcoming these wrong mental conditions, right? So seems simple enough, right? But I wanted to point out Well, he's telling us the purpose of these, right? So we're identifying mental conditions that are wrong, right? But he also says most easily eradicated. And I want to just make something very clear. Having read this book, having tried to apply these principles in my life successfully and sometimes not successfully, he says most easily eradicated. This does not mean they are easy. These are the easiest ones to get started with. But if you've had a lot of trouble with spiritual growth, with discipline, with change, and you have long established bad habits, this is not necessarily going to fall into the category of easy for you. I know it didn't for me. There was a lot of things I had to take a look at. There was a lot of actions that I had to take. There was a lot of stuff I had to work on, and I had to fail at. I had to continuously fail at. And keep working on it and keep looking at things and keep working on things and keep checking my motives, keep adjusting, trying to make it work, because I just needed to start somewhere. But don't think this is necessarily going to be easy, but it will be worthwhile. It will be worthwhile. It will pay off in the end. It will be something you will be grateful you have done if you put the energy into it, if you put the actions into it. But don't think that it's just going to be a simple remedy. Well, you know what? I don't want to put that in everyone's ear. Some people might find this easy. I don't believe most will. But if you find it easy, I am super happy for you. I'm extremely happy for you. But if you're anything like me, and you're willful, and you're selfish, and you're self-centered, getting started on this is not a simple chore. It's not a simple task at all. So give yourself some grace and some space to do this badly in the beginning. I just want to say that. So, and it's interesting also that it says that these steps will remove barriers to spiritual growth and you'll function better domestically and socially. I just finding him connecting it to those things as interesting for him to do that right in the front end, because it's almost just like, hey, you'll be able to function better in life if you do these things as well as spiritually grow. We want you to know that, right? It's like, it's immediately connecting these things that say, so your spiritual growth is directly connected to how you engage with the world, which has been my personal experience as well. When I boil it all down, when I take a look at what's going on, I had terrible social interactions. I didn't know how to function properly in friendships, in a workplace environment. I was completely maladapted to the world for a long time. And as I've grown spiritually and as I've grown in connection with a God of my understanding, with a power greater than myself, whatever that is for you, embrace it. I've been able to manage healthier relationships. I've been able to manage healthier personal interactions, personal dynamics, and things have changed for me substantially because of that. So I think it's awesome, actually, that he connected those two, because some people think everything is separate, but it's really all connected. It's really all interwoven into this spiritual way of living. And so it's kind of exciting, actually, when you think about it like that. So that was just the introduction. Let's go ahead and we're going to jump over to the steps or the lessons. I'll probably use those two words interchangeably, by the way, that he outlined for us, the 10 of them. So first he says the vices of the body. First lesson, discipline of the body. So lesson 1 was indolence. Lesson 2, self-indulgence. The next set of lessons is vices of the tongue. So it's the second lesson is discipline of speech. The first step or lesson is 1 is slander, 2 is gossiping and idle conversation, 3 is abusive and unkind speech, 4 is levity or irreverent speech, and 5 is captiousness or fault-finding speech. And then the third lesson is virtues to be practiced and acquired. And then, third practice, discipline of inclination, unself and So the first lesson or step is unselfish performance of duty. 2 is unswerving rectitude, and 3 is unlimited forgiveness. Sorry, I was just verifying those against the original printing. For some reason, I thought a word was different. It was not. So this mass production is following up pretty well. So those were the actual 10 steps he had outlined for us at the beginning to actually undertake and work on. So the first one that we'll be addressing next week is the vice of the body, the first lesson, discipline of the body. It will be the lesson about indolence, which the first 2 lessons I have done so much work on, and I still have a ways to go, but I'm really, really grateful for it. But so he breaks them down into body first, physical body, physical actions first, tongue second, our speech second, and then inclination, how we conduct ourselves, right? So, and these are the first, and remember, reading those, if you had just read those to me, like, hey, you've got to stop these things or change these things, I would have said, this is like a lifelong process. He calls these the first steps. I want you to know. And there's a lot more to do and to grow through when you're having this, when you're practicing a spiritual lifestyle, when you're actually walking through this, and you've gotten these first steps down even moderately, and you're practicing them relatively well or not well, you'll still see the growth you can have from them. But yeah, it's pretty impressive that he says these are the first ones, right? So, and I'm still working on pieces of them. So I don't know where that puts me on the spiritual growth scale, if I'm honest with you. But I know I'm not where I was, but I know that I've got a ways to go as well. So he does this categorization, though, to help people kind of put it in this prioritization also to help people kind of take a direction and understand what he's going to be referring to, and understand what he is going to be talking about in the next paragraphs and the steps we're taking, right? Because first steps in a higher life, a lot of people just thought they had to believe something or agree to something or take some one-time only action, and turns out that's not an actual spiritual change. That's checking a box so you feel better about yourself and moving on. So we wanted to highlight what we're going to be talking about, and also give example of the things we're going to be talking about in a general way, right? We're talking about vices of the body, vices of speech in our tongue, which need to change and stop entirely. So that's very different than many things. So, and he shared about this, but it must be clearly understood that these vices arise primarily in the mind, and they are wrong conditions of heart worked out in the body and tongue. Now, this is really, really important to highlight. We talk about this all the time on this podcast. Spiritual podcasts all over, religious podcasts all over, psychology podcasts all over talk about this same thing, right? The behaviors that we're addressing are not the actual problem. He's saying we're going to be talking about these things and we're going to be addressing these things in this certain type of way, but understand these actions and these words and these behaviors are not the problems in and of themselves. The problem originates in the mind, and the problem actually it comes from the heart. It starts here and moves here, and then it comes out of our mouths and out of our hands and embodied in our actions, manifested in our actions. So what is said and what is seen is actually the end of the process, not the beginning, right? It's not the entirety of the process. It's just the last little piece. It's the full, I don't even know what to say, how to phrase it. It's the fullest embodiment of our heart's condition is what people see and hear from us. which is a very small piece of everything at the end of the day. That's just one thing. That's just one aspect. There's so many more thoughts that go into it. There's so many more. There's so much more conditions of heart that needs to be addressed and looked at as to the motivations for these things. So it's the behaviors are symptoms of the problem. Now, if you are in a 12-step fellowship, this might sound familiar to you, right? This idea is very similar to 12-step fellowships, where they're saying drinking or drugging or eating or gambling or whatever the 12-step fellowship you're a part of is targeted at is a symptom of the issue, right? It's a symptom of a deeper problem. That sound familiar? Does to me. So we have to take a look at the roots of the issue, pull it out root and branch, as some might say. So we have to actually get down to causes and conditions. We have to get down to the reality of where this stuff's coming from. But this is where we get started, right? So it's highlighting, or it's alluding again to this process that like stop the behavior, see the thinking, change the thinking, and see the intention. See what your heart's intention is with this stuff, right? See how your heart's perspective, or where you actually function from in your soul, is inspiring this thinking, is guiding and directing your thoughts and your actions, right? Because that comes from somewhere. So we're talking about it again. To get well from using substances, you have to stop using substances. Right? It doesn't magically stop right away. You have to intentionally put it down, right? And then you do the work. You got to do the work. And then you switch from, and then eventually the hope is you switch from a selfish, at least this was my experience. I had to switch from a selfish and self-centered heart to a selfless and God-centered heart and other-centered heart, right? But that process started with a stopping of behavior, stopping of the symptom, which is the actions and the words. So James Allen was on the same track as all these self-help, recovery-based organizations later adopted 10, 15, 20 years later, 30 years later. So it was very inspiring to read this and see these ideas reiterated again for me. But where we're going to start, and he said this quote intentionally, right? That let it be clearly understood, these vices are primarily in the mind, and they are wrong conditions of heart worked out in the body. So we are starting externally, but no, that is not where the problem is. All right. So then he goes to talk about what those behaviors symbolize, right? The existence of such chaotic conditions, so the behaviors that we're going to be addressing in these 10 steps, is an indication that the mind is altogether unenlightened as to the real meaning and purpose of life, and their eradication is the beginning of a virtuous, steadfast, and enlightened life. So, if you are having a real problem with a lot of the things we're talking about, or we're going to be talking about over the next 10 weeks, it's showing you have some chaos in your life, and it's showing that your heart's desires, your heart's perspective, your heart's condition, your heart's state is not in the right place. You have your mind is not in an enlightened place, and doing this work is going to be crucial for you. Right. And it's going to be the beginning of what I love these words, virtuous, steadfast, and enlightened life. So these conditions show that we have a heart or a soul problem, and the overcoming of them gives us this opportunity to have this beautiful life. Like, who wouldn't want to have a virtuous life, a steadfast life, an enlightened life, right? These are all characteristics that we'd want. At least they are ones that I'd want. These are ones that I have worked for. These are ones that I have strove to achieve, right? But that leads to the next question. So what's next, right? But how shall they be overcome and eradicated? We want to eradicate them so we can get that virtuous, steadfast, and enlightened life. And he says, by first and at once, so immediately, very quickly, right away, checking and controlling their outward manifestations by suppressing the wrong act. So this is how we start, right? This is the willful suppression of unhealthy behaviors. Now, for those who haven't had a 12-step interaction or a recovery interaction through a 12-step program, or really have explored an understanding of what willfulness is, or the human will, or things like that, aren't going to recognize the fact that the suppression of the willful suppression of these unhealthy behaviors, so choosing to suppress these wrong acts, right? So taking intentional steps to stop these is difficult, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of dedication and energy, right? We have to choose not to do unhealthy behaviors. So it's just like when someone's getting sober, when someone's getting into recovery, they have to choose not to drink. Now, I don't know if you're like me at all, but it came to a point where I could want to choose not to do that as much as I wanted to, but that will only ever last so long. My willpower to stay away from bad behaviors that have served me in some way, at least at some point in my life, it took a lot of willpower to do it, but it was not something I could maintain either, right? So it was something that I had to do first, right? They say you have to put the plug in the jug, you have to, put the substances down, and give yourself the opportunity to actually get sober and emotionally get sober and recover and all of these other ways it's phrased. But so what they're saying is you have to intentionally stop it, but that won't work. That's not a long-term goal, right? If you are always resisting the urge to drink, eventually the perfect conditions or the worst conditions occur, however you want to phrase that, where you will pick it back up again because you still want to. And you have a lapse of willpower, you have a lapse of judgment, you have a moment of weakness, as some might say, and then you're back on, or you're off the wagon and you're back out and running. But this can be with anything. This can be with shopping. This can be with gambling. This can be with unhealthy romantic relationships. This could be with friendships. This could be with anything that you start engaging in unhealthy behaviors again. So it's not enough to just choose to not do it. You have to do the work that's behind it, right? There's a lot of work that needs to actually go into this thing for you to stop wanting to do the behavior, right? The point of recovery and sobriety is not white knuckle willfully not drinking and not drugging. It's learning to live a way of life that allows you to live a life that's one you enjoy so much you would never want to give it up to drink and drug again, right? So it's changing your living. It's changing your thinking. It's changing your heart. And that's what James Allen is talking about with this whole thing. He's saying you've got to intentionally stop these behaviors. And when we get into the steps, he's going to give us some suggestions on how we should actually behave, right? To replace it with healthier behaviors, right? But doing that will only work for so long. And this is what he says. So by suppressing the wrong act, this will stimulate the mind to watchfulness and reflection until by repeated practice, it will at last come to perceive and understand the dark and wrong conditions of mind out of which such acts spring, and will abandon them entirely. So here we go. This is the work piece. So you intentionally stop the behavior. And whenever you want to do the behavior, you have to have the willingness to take a look at what you're thinking about, how you're feeling, what's going on with you. because when you do that, you can see how that behavior served you, and you can see where it's coming from. You can see the selfishness, the self-centeredness, the self-absorption, the fear, the delusion, whatever it is that's going along with it. You can take an honest look at that. And you can just tear that apart. You can actually investigate it and then change it. But you have to stop the behavior so it gives you the space to actually look at the thinking behind the behavior. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to come up to the behavior and say no. Come up to the behavior and say no. Come up to the behavior, say no. Come up to the behavior, say no, until you can't stand it anymore and you say yes again. So you have to look at what the mind is thinking, what is going through the head, what is going through your desires that makes you think picking up a drink is going to be good. That makes you think picking up a drug is going to be good. That makes you think maxing out another credit card is going to be a good idea. That makes you think spending your rent money on the Super Bowl is going to pay off for you. You have to take a look at what that is doing for you. What purpose is that serving for you? Is it quelling a fear? Is it the excitement you're looking for in your life? Is it giving you pleasure? Is it just letting you feel numb and getting away from the world? Or is it letting you escape in some way? Is it distracting you from a life you can't stand to be a part of anymore, right? So these are things you have to honestly look at. And then when you've identified what it's doing for you, you can start to change the way you're thinking about things. You can start to change your heart, and you can start to change your perception, right? Now, for those, again, who have had 12-step experiences, right, who have gone through and done the steps of a 12-step program, does this sound like a 4th step to anybody? I don't know. Sounds like a 4th step to me. Sounds like a 10th step to me. It sounds like a lot of things related to recovery to me. This is the recovery process that he's outlining here. We have to take an honest look at these things. And the more we do that, the more dedication, the more effort we put into this, and the more diligence and perseverance that we put into it, the more it will pay off. The more change we can establish, the more purification of our heart can happen, the more righting of our mind will occur. And these are big words. These are big concepts. These are things we've wanted. At least, let me change that. Things I've wanted for a long time. But I didn't know I needed to change the way I thought about the world. I didn't realize I had a selfish and self-centered heart that was betraying me. But by doing these types of actions, by stopping a behavior, taking a look at the thinking, changing the thinking, and changing the intention of what I want it to do and who it's serving, and changing the heart that's behind it, changing the quality of my soul, I guess maybe that's a way to say it, or the condition of my heart, maybe. My life has changed, right? This is where the change happens. And this is where the growth and the life that you've always wanted can be. And the peace of mind and all of these wonderful things that James Allen always talks about. That is where this comes. This is the introduction to these steps of spiritual change that we're going to be taking a look at. So remember, we're going to be talking about what to stop, how to replace it, and then taking a look at the thinking behind it, so we can intentionally think different things. And when you can intentionally think different things, you can change the way you look at the entire world. It's a beautiful thing, absolutely beautiful thing. So, but that's going to be it for today. I'm really looking forward to getting into these steps one by one. The episodes might be a little shorter going forward because they're really only a page long, or sometimes even a half a page long for each step as we go forward. And again, I will be sharing, we'll be tearing apart the reading, then I'll be sharing my personal experience with it and how it looks to me to actually work these steps that James Allen has suggested into my life. So I hope you guys enjoy that as we go along. And I hope you're as excited for this new segment as I am, and going through these together. So thank you so much. Next week we will start with lesson 1 on the vices of the body and disciplining the body, which is about indolence. So until next time, thanks.